Welcome to the Garbage Pod. One pod, one load of garbage.
29 and 28.
Remanded in custody.
There's something curious about this broadcast.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 21 of the Garbage Pod. It's quite an exciting episode for the crew and I, because it's something we've been looking forward to for quite some time, ever since we knew this was going to take place. Earlier in the week, we had a chat and a little bit of an interview with somebody that we grew up with on television in the 80s and 90s, and all will be revealed in a moment. First of all, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous. Firstly, Jonathan O'Callaghan from All About Space magazine. Although he couldn't help us out with the Yuri's Night episode, he managed to source me a copy of All About Space issue 1. Also, the guys at Space Vidcast, in conjunction with Jeffrey from yurisnight.net, for sending me one of the official Yuri's Night t-shirts. Right, I think it's about time we got on with this episode.
I can now reveal who our special guest is. It's the one and only Gareth Jones. Welcome on board the Garbage Pod, sir.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be on someone else's podcast for a change instead of my own.
Well, she's not exactly the Millennium Dustbin, but she does us.
Well remembered. I'm not sure how many people remember the name of the spacecraft I travelled around in 1986 to 88, so well done, Mark.
Before we start, I'd like to just introduce you to the rest of the guys. Okay, we have Adri Mallows.
Hello, Adri.
Hello, Gareth. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you, sir.
Oh, man. Likewise. Thank you very much.
And, of course, John Witts.
Hey, John.
Hi, Gareth. How you doing?
And where are you in the world?
Letchworth, just sort of 30 miles north of London.
Yeah, not that I'm in Stoke Newington, so I'm on the north side. You can see your house from here.
And Adri's in Aylesbury.
All right, all very nice. I spent a week filming up in Aylesbury a long time ago, doing a show called What's So Good About Roald Dahl. I spent a week in his house filming. He lives up near Aylesbury. I forget the name of the village. What's it called?
Princess Risborough?
Is that what it is? I can't remember now.
Yeah, that's where his museum is. Yeah.
Right.
He's got one in Aylesbury as well, hasn't he? The kids' museum.
It's more of a gallery thing, so that kids can draw like. What's his name? Who was the name of the illustrator on the Roald Dahl books?
I know who you mean.
Was it Quentin Blake?
It was Quentin. Well done. I'm writing a book myself at the moment, and I cited him as the sort of design I'm looking for, the illustration in this book that I'm writing. So, fresh in the brain.
He also did the illustrations in David Walliams' children's books that he's writing.
The boy in the dress, and what's the other one called?
Was there a girl called Filth or something like that?
That's it. My children have read those. They love them to bits.
But yeah, because he loves Roald Dahl, so he wanted to try and give it the same kind of feel. So that's why he asked Quentin Blake to come in.
He did well.
Right. First of all, a lot of our listeners are not from these shores, so I'm not too sure how well known you are out of these waters.
Well, there are pockets of familiarity, but you're right. Mainly my career has been UK focused, but one of the programmes I made, How To, was shown in English speaking markets all over the world, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, and in fact it was dubbed into Spanish and ran very successfully, I kid you not, in South America. And I still get messages from people in South America saying that they loved I forgot what it's called in Spanish. It's called How and Why, and my Spanish isn't very good. That's why they had to dub me.
How would you describe yourself? Because you've done so many things in your career.
That's a tricky one because it does vary. A bit like someone's accent, depending who you're talking to, I describe myself as a science communicator primarily these days, but I think that's probably inaccurate. I'm sort of a factual communicator. There are a lot of people on television because they can tell jokes or they can sing songs or, juggle or something. But I guess I was on TV because I can enthuse about facts that I've picked up along the way. My father was an electronics engineer, and he got me very interested in engineering, science and technology when I was young. And so, he used to sort of do to me what I've done to, the UK television children's audience for 25 years. He would enthuse about things, So how would I describe myself? TV presenter, enthusiast. I like cars. I like spacecraft and Star Trek and lots of other things as well.
Some of you out there might know Gareth by a name that was used in his earlier career, which was Gaz Top, but I know you're not too keen on that being used too frequently.
Yeah, I don't mind at all admitting that I was Gaz Top a long time ago. No, I'm very proud of that ridiculously haired, lisping ex-roadie I was when I first appeared on television. It's just that from about 1989, I returned to using my real name, Gareth Jones, primarily for two reasons. I wanted people to know I was a Welshman, and I wanted people to try and take me seriously. I don't think anyone ever did. But the idea was that maybe one day I might get to present the BBC's flagship science programme, Tomorrow's World. That was always an ambition. And I figured, they're never going to give that gig to someone called Gaz Top, are they? It's just too silly. So I figured, that time I was Gareth Jones. Gaz Top was only ever a nickname anyway.
Yeah, they gave a similar kind of programme to a guy called Dallas Campbell.
yeah, which I believe is an anagram of something very sensible.
Now, where did the name Gaz Top come from?
Well, I was a roadie for a band back in, I think it was 1979 or 1980. They were called 17 back then, the band, but they later became The Alarm. And Mike Peters, who's the lead singer of the band, and I went to see the Sex Pistols movie, The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, together. And there's a line in that film which goes, it's sort of delivered a bit like a Pathé newsreel. It goes, and those four lovable spiky tops, the Sex Pistols signed their contract with EMI Records outside Buckingham Palace. And it made me giggle, the idea of lovable spiky tops. And at the time I had spiky topped hair, it was the 80s or the late 70s, very spiky hair. And so did Mike Peters. And so I started calling him Spiky Top, and he started calling me Gagsy Top, Gagsy being short for Gareth. And that became Gaz Top. And then when the fans of the band collected autographs, not only of the band, but real hardcore fans got autographs from the road crew as well. As a joke, I started signing it Gaz Top, like that was my stage name or something. And it sort of stuck, and I just became known as Gaz Top, the Alarm Roadie. And when I started on television, I took the name with me.
So you must have rubbed shoulders with some serious musos in those days then.
Yeah, we, it was the 80s, so here comes a long list of 80s musicians that The Alarm and 17 played with. We played with the Boomtown Rats, The Beat, Flock of Seagulls, Dexy's Midnight Runners, the Stray Cats, and U2. And I actually ended up being a bit of a U2 roadie for 6 weeks in America on the War Tour.
Wow.
Because The Alarm were the support band for U2. As soon as The Alarm were finished, I then became Bono's roadie for the second part of the gig. So I know those lads. Well, we knew them very well anyway before they sort of broke. That's why I got pulled on board.
So I've noticed they're all bands with big hair.
Well, it was of the period, and I sort of fitted in well with my hair. So, completely normal in those days to have hair, as it is to be grey now,
Yeah. So, how did the transition from being a roadie to being a television presenter come about?
It happened very quickly. The first clue was when I was in the States. The Alarms record label in the States, IRS, also had a TV production wing, and they made a program for MTV in the States that was called The Cutting Edge. And because it was the Alarms label's TV program, every time the Alarm were in the States, they would interview them. And of course, this was fine for like 3 or 4 visits. But then after that, they were kind of getting desperate things to talk to them about. And once one of the members of the band said, no, don't interview us this time. Talk to Gaz. You know, he'll cook you a meal. He'll do a spag ball or something and tell you some good rock and roll stories, which is, you know, I used to feed the band when we all lived together as well. And so they invited me to do this. And on the day or the week that we were supposed to do this, our tour was rescheduled and we left Los Angeles and had to go over to New York to play with the Pretenders. So that gig that I'd been asked to do, I had to let them down. I couldn't do it. But it planted in my mind the idea that, well, maybe I could do some TV if American TV is interested in talking to me. But it was only sort of the back of the mind idea. I was very happy as a roadie. You know, I was traveling the world, playing rock and roll with my 4 best mates in the world. You know, it doesn't get better than that. And getting paid for it, of course. Excellent. But when I got back to the UK a couple of years later, an old pal of mine, he used to be in a band with me in North Wales, had been for a screen test for a new music channel called Music Box starting up in the UK. He didn't get the job. He said, no, you should go for it because, you know, we used to do youth theatre and together and I know you can perform and I know you've got stories to tell about rock and roll. Go down. So I marched into this office, a company called Music Box in London, and they said that having interviewed me, they wanted to do a screen test. And about 3 or 4 days later, I got my own very first TV program, my own TV show. The whole thing took about 4 days, the transition from roadie to TV presenter. And it wasn't like a deliberate career long-term thing. You know, it just sort of, okay, this is what I'm doing now. And that was in January 1985, and I'm more or less still broadcasting some almost 30 years later.
Wow, so that was well before the launch of MTV in the UK then?
Yes, it was, yeah. Music Box started in the UK in 84. I joined in 85 and did it till 86 when I made the transition to Get Fresh, the Saturday morning programme I did in the UK.
I mean, I've seen some clips of some of the stuff that was on the Music Box because I wasn't much aware of it because, well, I didn't have satellite TV back then. But, yeah, I've noticed on TV Arc, there is an outtakes reel from Music Box on there.
Excellent.
So I might have to see if I can obtain that for the to go on the show notes. with the podcast.
Put a link up. Yeah, on your page. That'd be a great idea. Is it mainly the sort of the musicians and the artists or the presenters?
There's a lot of presenter, shall we say, foul ups on the.
Excellent. I haven't seen that. I must look out for it. Am I in it?
Not as much as some of the others, I must admit.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Simon Potter on there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, bless.
And Nino's on there a lot as well. So
Beto, who quite often, I believe, he gets people going up to him and saying, "Are you Gareth Top?" Because we did have very similar hair back in the 80s.
He just came across to me as some kind of, I don't know, some kind of gigolo. He had that look about him.
He was very Latin. He was, yes, Fretto with a name like that, and a lovely chap actually, a very soft and gentle man, a very nice guy. Got a lot of time for Nino.
Didn't he do one of the remakes of, or the revamp, should I say, of Mr. and Mrs.? I think he did.
He did, yes, well remembered, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. So, what kind of people did you actually interview, or have you got any interesting stories about some of the interviews or whatever you conducted on the Music Box?
I remember interviewing Gary Newman and really not wanting to talk about music at all. I mean, I was a fan of Gary, and still am a fan of electronic music, definitely Gary Newman. But I knew that at the time, he was getting into aircraft. He had enough money to buy an old Harvard, and I really just wanted to talk to him about aircraft. But I seem to remember getting told off at some point. No one else knew what you were talking about. It's okay to mention these things, but I was genuinely interested. So Gary Newman, it was always very tricky interviewing the Alarm when they turned up because I knew everything that they were doing. They would be best mates. That was very hard. Do you remember a band called King Kurt? They were sort of they called themselves a psychobilly band. And
yes.
They were out of control. They were very hard to interview. That was a very tough interview. Even Ian McCulloch from Echo and the Bunnymen, who I got to know, Ian, I was very, very drunk on an interview one day, and it was a hopeless interview. But the best thing about being on Music Box was I got to interview my, number one heroes of all time, the members of the band known as Slade. I interviewed Noddy, Don, Jim, and Dave, and then managed to organise getting them in for a big interview, in which case I turned into a documentary about Slade called Perseverance, which I believe is on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, right.
Of which Slade fans argue is the definitive Slade documentary, which I, as a Slade fan, I'm enormously proud of. And that was in my first year of television, so I was making it up as I went along. But to make a program about your heroes and then to get to know your heroes, that was the best thing about Music Box.
Just recently watched a documentary on BBC 4 about Slade, actually. It was quite interesting because it just seems really weird that Noel Gallagher is really into Slade.
Yeah, he's a huge Slade fan, and you can hear it. Just the slur on his guitar is a bit like Noddy Holder's style at the start of Take Me Back Home or Come On Feel the Noise. You can hear that drag across the strings.
Well, they did a cover of it, didn't they? Come On Feel the Noise.
Yeah. And they're proud as well. I'm very pleased. But Noel Gallagher rates How Does It Feel as his number one of all time Slade song, and I wouldn't disagree. It's a tremendous song.
Because I remember on this documentary that Dave Hill was going on about the where the name and the title of Come On Feel the Noise came from, and it is literally the sound of the crowd.
Yeah, that was me. I was making most of that sound, screaming my head off. You can hear Slade in Gareth Jones on Speed. You can hear Slade in Oasis, and you can hear Slade in my car podcast, Gareth Jones on Speed, the signature ident for the programme, because it goes...
Crichton, what are you doing, man?
Oh, sir, I'm listening to the Garbage Pod. It's a podcast I found in the podosphere.
From the Music Box, it leads us to the subject that made me believe that Twitter works, mainly because I just started using Twitter and I wanted to get hold of the theme tune for the TV show that Gareth hosted called Get Fresh. Yeah. So I put a tweet out asking if anybody knew where I could source it from. And within 30 minutes, I received a reply from Gareth asking me for my email address so that he could send me an MP3 of the theme tune.
Yeah, well, I like to help out when I can.
And it was amazing because you were telling me that the theme tune had been composed by none other than Mick Jones from The Clash.
That's right,
and Big Audio Dynamite.
Yeah. I was enormously proud of that. I never set out to be a kids' TV presenter. I wanted to be either the first Welshman on the moon or Jimmy Lee, the bass player in Slade. So when I did eventually get pulled out to do kids' television for ITV, the fact that this was quite a cool, dark program, we were in this very Giga-looking spacecraft, and the fact that the theme tune was written by a member of The Clash, that made everything okay for me. That allowed me to transition to kids' TV.
Mick Jones, when Big Audio Dynamite folded up and he revamped the group and called them Bad 2, which I actually like their first album, The Globe, as bad too, because you listen to the album, there's so many samples from classic tracks. There's The Who, there's Ultravox, there's Kate Bush.
Yeah. Well, in fact, on his latest project, Carbon Silicon, which is Mick Jones and Tony James from CC Sputnik, they use a Slade sample. Come Off Feel the Noise, actually, I think. Oh, no, Mama. It's a sample from Mama, We're All Crazy Now. And, for me, a combination of Mick Jones and Slade and CC Sputnik all in one, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, a friend of mine from work actually told me about them, and I was like, whoa, I've got to hear this, Mick Jones. And I just had this Zig Sputnik Mick Jones crossover. I thought, where can this go?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. I mean, they're old allies, those two. They go way back to Generation X, of course, and Chelsea. I think, let me think about this. Was Tony James in the original lineup of Chelsea, the punk band? Quite possibly. And Chelsea and The Clash were two sides of the same coin a long time ago. So, yeah, they've been mates a very long time.
It was Generation X. That was Billy Idol, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. Billy Idol was the singer. Martin Durwood Andrews, is that his name, on guitar, and Tony James on bass. I forget who the drummer was completely, but loved Gen X.
Excellent. What was it like working on a Saturday morning TV show of that scale? I mean, before you had all these classic shows that you had to fill the shoes of, as it were. Yeah. Well, the only one that really mattered to me previously was Tiswas, which was a really anarchic children's programme of the late 70s, early 80s. And it left a lasting effect on children's TV. It brought gunge pretty much to television. And there was some gunge in Get Fresh. But it was a very different show. It had a strong factual base, bizarrely, Get Fresh, whereas Tiswas was a studio-based programme. Get Fresh went around the country and was made by a different ITV company every week. One week it was HTV in Wales, next week it was Scottish Television, then TSW in the southwest. And so it was a bit ropey round the edges because, no one ever got to do the programme long enough to get it right. Everyone had a go and thought, well, we'll get it better next time. And we would go and do items about the region that we were in. When we're in Scotland, we do a thing about bagpipes and kilts, and when we were in Devon, we do a thing about making ice cream and butter, and when we were in Wales, we do something about, I remember doing something about satellites in Wales, actually, because Swansea University were involved in the development of the Giotto space probe, if I recall, back in '86. So, I was doing factual stuff even then, even though it was a Saturday morning entertainment show. I'd already started to explain stuff to people, and that's what I tend to do even to this day. I've actually found a clip from Get Fresh. It was an episode where you were going to be talking to a specialist about space exploration and a former shuttle astronaut, and you seemed very excited.
Really? Was it? Oh, wow, I don't even remember this. Who was it? It wasn't Robert Overmyer, was it?
I think it was, yes.
Really? How about that?
And
I'd completely forgotten that. Is that on YouTube somewhere?
Well, the interview, I don't know about the interview, but the actual start-up of the programme, when you're there and you've got this book about the space shuttle and you sort of... You can see in your seat the energy as you want to talk about it and go, shuttle and excellent,
I wonder, actually, if that was from Sunday Get Fresh, which was the studio-based recorded show that we did. Saturday Get Fresh was live, but we did do, for the second and third season, a whole bunch of other programmes that were done in a studio in Carlisle. And I interviewed Nigel McKnight, who had written a book called Shuttle, and he later arranged for me to go and have a tour of John F. Kennedy Space Center. So I went into the VAB and I went into the orbiter processing facility, and I even got to touch Atlantis on a later trip.
Wow.
But he sort of opened up NASA to me. He gave me a contact there, and it's, again, one of the great pleasures. Like, like you, I know someone who's passionate about space exploration, to have the opportunity to have access to the most exciting place on the planet, John F. Kennedy Space Center, was a dream come true.
Because I've been to KSC as well, and Adri has been to Johnson, haven't you, Adri?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I went to Houston Space Center about 3 years ago now. Fantastic experience, and got the grand tour and got to sit in mission control, or the old mission control, and phenomenal.
Did they have any space hardware there? Because I like space hardware.
The one thing I remember the most actually is going into a hangar where they've got a disused rocket, and it's just ridiculously big. You can't comprehend the size of it till you see it in person.
It's one of the like they've got at Kennedy. It's one of the Saturn V's.
It's Apollo 20, isn't it? I think at Johnson. What would have been Apollo 20, I think.
Yeah, it could have been actually. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. Great experience. Great day out.
Because I was out there for the launch of STS 101. Back in 2000, and it was just an amazing feeling more than anything else.
You've seen a shuttle launch live. Where were you for it?
Virtually right by the countdown clock.
Wow, that's about as close as you can get, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we were more worried about the alligators more than anything else, because you can see those from where we were.
It's interesting what you say about being a feeling. I was describing to someone the other day how I'd witnessed, I think it was an Atlas II launch many years ago when I was in Florida. And you feel it sort of popping and crackling on your face.
Yeah.
You know, it is, apart from being an emotional feeling, there is a tangible physical thing when the ground shakes and you feel the sound rather than simply hear it. And that was just a little old Atlas. I can't imagine what those two SRBs and the SSMEs would have sounded like.
The feel of it was almost like somebody punching you in the chest. It was really an unusual feeling.
Wow.
You can't really describe it. And that was a shuttle. And I thought to myself, how would a Saturn V have been? Yeah, wouldn't you love to hear those? What do you call them? J1 engines, F1 engines? F1s, yeah.
F1s just tearing away at the fabric of space-time, which is what they do, really, I think.
Well, this is what I'm looking forward to, because when SpaceX launched this Falcon Heavy, because the Falcon 9, obviously the 9 actually is the amount of Merlin engines that are on it. So you've got 9 engines. Now, the Falcon Heavy is supposed to have 23.
Genius. I love their approach. You know, rather than develop a rocket motor and then develop a bigger version, then develop a bigger version, then develop a bigger version, which is expensive and all that the development time, they develop one motor which works well, then strap it to another one, then strap that to another one, strap that to, and you're maximising your development money in doing that. It's similar to the model used by the former Soviet space program. You know, the what do we call it? The SL-16, the Soyuz launcher.
Yeah, the Soyuz,
is basically that, a bunch of small motors.
I mean, you think about that. I mean, that rocket has been going since the 1960s, and it's still going strong.
Not only is it going strong, but it can now get you to the International Space Station faster than any other rocket on Earth.
Yeah,
the maths worked out, haven't they?
I don't know if the other guys know about this, but recently they've reconfigured how they were going to get to the space station. They've taken a different route, as it were, where it used to take 2 days to get to the space station. They can now do it in 6.5 hours.
I reckon the way that they're achieving this is that they have actually invented warp drive. And what they're doing is they're folding the space between Kazakhstan and the point 300 miles up where the ISS orbits and really jump that void. They're building a small wormhole, basically. Well, that's the only way they could possibly do this, in my opinion.
Yeah, something to do with dark matter somewhere along the line, I feel.
Oh, it's always dark matter.
But, I mean, even Arianespace have got the Soyuz now as well.
That's right. They launched that from Guyana. In fact, I wrote a format for a television program recently called Space on Earth, which is essentially a tour of what is, in my opinion, some of the most exciting places on Earth, where they launch spacecraft at French Guiana. The reason for going to French Guiana was to stand next to the new pit that they've built for the Zoyas over there and go, look, they're launching Russian rockets. Europeans are launching Russian rockets in South America. How international is that, you know? And then to go to, I forget the name of the Chinese launch facility, but I'd love to see Shenzhou being launched.
I just love the way that when that's on the platform, the way that the different stages open up on the gantries,
it's gorgeous, isn't it?
It's weird. I've never seen anything like it. And the fact
I love the Chinese attitude to manned space flight as well, because whereas the American space launches, everything is big talk.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And the Russian launches, they're all very damped down. It's all very, okay, pleased to go on space now. But the Chinese, they do it happily. They applaud and they cheer and they wave from their capsule as they're being launched into space. And that's a wonderful thing to witness.
If you look at the amount of space, or not space, the amount of time that it's taken the Chinese to get where they are now, it's amazing.
They're going to have warp drive themselves in less than 6 months at present rates of development, aren't they? I
really do think if we do go back to the moon, it's going to be the Chinese who get there first.
Well, they've set a target, I believe, of certainly orbiting the moon by 2020. How they will achieve that, I'm not sure. Whether they're just going to send one of their Shenzhous with the, what's that little orbital space station that they've got attached to it, into a sort of an Apollo 8 free return trajectory, or perhaps an Apollo 13 free return trajectory. Yeah. But as soon as they attempt a landing on the moon, you can guarantee America won't let them do that and will need to be there first. So it's good news.
Well, it is, because all this, what I call new space, commercial space as it started a new space race.
Yeah, that's right. That's the premise of my programme, Space on Earth, that the space race is back on. It's just that no one's told you it started yet.
And what with these, I don't know if you've heard about these companies that are now asking people to start crowdfunding for asteroid mining.
Yeah, well, it's a long shot, but I love expanding the limits of possibilities, and if we really can mine asteroids, that's a very interesting theory. But what will it do to the value of precious metals on Earth?
That
we
is
suddenly discover a new supply. It could cause a big financial crash on Earth, in my opinion.
Yeah,
interesting.
It could well do. But I mean, it's not the only reason for them mining the asteroids, because they're looking for also for different new forms of fuels and things that will help them to get to Mars and things.
Yeah, it's all very self-serving. If we go to space in order to keep us going to space, then in my books, that's a good reason to go to space.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Why not? Right, I could go on for ages talking about space, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we've got to wrap this soon. It's half an hour. Those poor people listening are going to be bored, aren't they? I try not to make any episode of my car podcast longer than about 30 minutes, because at that point, I know people are perhaps getting thirsty or need the toilet.
Well, I think we should talk about a little bit about your current projects that you're involved with.
Yeah.
For example, your podcast.
Yeah, I've started making a car podcast called Gareth Jones on Speed. Back in, I think it was 2005, we did the first season, so this is now season 9. And it's an extraordinary hit. I'm very pleased that along the way I've been involved in some programmes. It's been a big hit. Get Fresh was a big hit. How To was a big hit. And it seems that On Speed is as well. You know, we had something like 600,000 downloads last year, which is quite an achievement for something which, you know, is recorded in my living room with a bit of enthusiasm and the desire to get it out there, and very little support. But it's a bit of a hit. It's usually number 2 in the iTunes audio automotive podcast chart, which is tremendous news.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Because
I'm very proud, but we put a lot of effort into it. Many podcasts are simply 2 or 3 people just chatting, but we do the chat thing, 3 people chatting, but we also do sketches and songs and interviews. We go places and we hear the sound of cars. It's an overproduced podcast, if I'm honest. Not many shows, bespoke podcasts, have this amount of production time put into them, and maybe I spend too much time on it, but it's the only thing I know.
Because I know your love for motor racing is quite extensive, really, and I know Adri wanted to ask you a couple of things about motor racing, didn't you, Adri?
Yes, please, yeah, Gareth, if I may. Just thoughts on Formula One, really. It's just with everything that's obviously happened over the last couple of Grand Prix, I just wanted to get your take and thoughts on Sebastian Vettel and team orders in Formula One.
Well, I won't answer that because that is a topic of conversation which I recorded last night for the next episode of Gareth Jones on Speed.
Right, okay.
It's a big part of the programme, so if anyone wants to know my thoughts on that, they're very clear in that programme. But I think Formula One's in good shape at the moment, and what I will say is that, yes, he probably was naughty doing what he did, but it's been great for Formula One because it's created such a stir, such a controversy, that it's part of the backstory. It's part of the soap of Formula One. My initial love for Formula One is because basically it's just an engineering show, and I love the engineering side. But the backstory, the soap opera that goes with it, is what keeps you coming back for more. And I love the whole drama of multi-21, as they called it. It's been great.
It almost takes you back. I actually I watched Senna for the first time on Friday night, and it kind of takes you back, not necessarily the quality of it, but the whole Senna-Prost rivalry and the animosity between the two of them towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Ruthlessness will only ever result in one outcome. And if you're ruthless enough, you can be successful. I've seen that in television and radio from people I've worked with. And it's no different in the cutthroat sport that is Formula One. And I think Vettel probably wants to carve himself out as a Senna, a Schumacher, someone who will stop at nothing in order to achieve true greatness. But at what cost? That's all I'm saying.
That's it, because the thing I picked up as well from watching Senna was, it was whilst he was that on the track, when you look at him in the driver's press conference, you only have to look at when he made the big fuss about taking the tyres out from one of the corners, where eventually Prost ended up going off and potentially would have had a bad accident flying off into the tyres.
Yeah, I mean, the devil's in the detail. Take care of the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. If you have that sort of attention to detail, it will work for you in the long run, I would think, if you think about everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Gareth.
Oh, Andrew, I would talk about F1 all day, but that's what I do on Gareth Jones on Speed, so perhaps I shouldn't here.
But
No worries, I'll make sure I check that out.
Excellent plug for the show, though.
Thank you. Well, something I learned from a book many years ago, a book you might want to read called Expensive Habits, written by a man called Simon Garfield, which was about rock and roll. And in it, he makes this wonderful statement. He says, hits don't happen, they are made. And that's what Vettel's doing right now, and that's what I've always done with Gareth Jones on Speed. I worked hard at making it a hit, because it isn't going to happen organically, and if you do that, you give it its best chance. And I can see that you're doing the same in the Garbage Pod too. Well done.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, to be honest with you. I mean, it was an idea that has been buzzing around my head since probably 2009, and we went live in 2011, and it's been growing. And this year I've decided to try and make this the kind of a podcaster's podcast, if you like, so that I can, endorse other podcasts, and that they can come online, and the Garbage Pod can hopefully be brought to another audience, and whoever I've got on the show, their podcasts can be brought to our audience as well. Excellent plan. Good luck with it. It is a community. Podcasters
work in isolation, and this is perhaps the nearest thing we're ever going to get to a union doing something like this. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about it on here, and I'll give you a plug on Twitter some point too. Thank you.
And thanks for being on the show, Gareth. You've been an absolute star.
My absolute and utter pleasure. Thank you very much, Mark. Cheers, John, and cheers, Andrew.
And
Thank you very much.
And you're always welcome to come again whenever you like.
Cool. Thanks, man. And I suppose we're going to sign off with the not that out for now. Just a simple see ya. Thanks.
Take care, Gareth.
Bye.
Gareth, bye.
So there you have it. Gareth Jones, absolute legend. And thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show. And I hope everyone enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of The Garbage Pod. Visit www.thegarbagepod.weebly.com for the show notes for this or any other episode of The Garbage Pod or TGP Extra. Just look for the Garbage Pod show section in the menu. While you're on the website, why not have a nose about? You can find a little bit more about me and the rest of the crew and find out what's going on in the podosphere by reading the blog and much, much more. Let us know what you think of the show.
Send an email to garbagepod@virginmedia.com.
Because
your input is our output.
Or you can use the social media icons at the top of the website, which include Twitter and Facebook. If you would like to subscribe to the show, you could do so via iTunes, the RSS feed, and now via YouTube. If you look on the right hand side of the show's page, the blog, or even the video vault, you'll see a little button there that says donate. If you like what we do and you feel that you could give us a little something just to help us out a bit, we would be most appreciative. And don't forget, spread the word. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
The Garbage Pod is a Spamhead production.
I don't know if he's still there.
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, heart stopped for a second then.
Did it cut out again?
Yeah, no worries.